Yeah.
Okay, hello everyone, and my name is Ziyi Jiang. I'm from China, and I am now in the Cal State University San Bernardino, and I'm a graduate student here. And I graduated in China in Xi'an International Studies University. So I'm here to interview Professor Michael to do kind of the writing assignment in the English courses.
All right, cool. And as she said, my name is Michael Buckhoff. I've been an English professor here at Cal State University since around 1994 when I first started. I typically teach English composition classes, either first year or upper division composition classes. I also sometimes teach linguistic classes. My other area of expertise, I also teach for the College of Extended Learning in the American Culture and Language program, and in that program I typically teach ESL type classes including TOEFL preparation. In addition to being a professor here at Cal State University San Bernardino, I also have a website called bettertoeflscores.com, and I have a TOEFL course called the 7-Step System to pass a TOEFL IBT. And thank you for coming to my office today. I hope I can help you.
Okay, shall we start our questions?
Sure.
Okay, so the first question is, what are your beliefs about writing? Because you mentioned that you teach the ESL student, and especially the population is for the TOEFL, people who are going to take the TOEFL text. So for them, what constitutes a good writing, or how is it achieved?
Okay. Whether you're doing the TOEFL independent or integrated writing tasks, or whether you're doing a writing assignment for an English class, for example in my English 102B class right now, which consists of mostly Korean students, and they're taking writing right now. I would say number one is, whatever the writing assignment is, and typically for the English department and for my writing classes, I'll typically have 2 or 3, maybe even 4 parts of the writing assignment. And the writing is typically asking them to argue some type of point, and typically they have to base their argument in response to other texts that they're reading. That's kind of similar a little bit to the integrated writing task on the TOEFL IBT. But in my classes, number one, do they address the writing task? Do they address the writing assignment? That's first. Secondly, is the depth and the complexity of thought. So how much thinking went into the writing? Do they have appropriate development? Do they use supporting details to help support the main ideas that they're making? To me, that's also important, I think, in writing. In addition to that, obviously the organization. We have to look at how coherently organized the writing is. So in my first year comp class, the students work on, let's say they're doing a 6-page paper, they'll probably have some type of introduction with a thesis statement. Then they'll have topic sentences in those body paragraphs to try to unify the different ideas together. So that's also an important aspect of, I think, what makes good writing. And then finally, we get to the last part, which is what's called grammar. Any grammar or writing like sentence structure type issues or anything about mechanics, including punctuation, I also look at that. But as you'll notice, in terms of, I kind of use a rubric that I'll use to actually grade my students, and notice how only one of them talks about grammar, is generally free from errors, mechanics, usage, and sentence structure. However, addresses the topic clearly, explores use of thoughtfully and in depth, is coherently, logically organized. I actually consider those first 3 things as being more important than just this grammar area. Yeah, and as you know, with the multilingual students, students whose first language is not English, obviously they do have some errors when they're writing. But to me, that's not the most important part of the writing. That's just my own philosophy. Now, the difficulty they'll face is they may sometimes have what's called translation issues. They're thinking maybe in Chinese, or they might be thinking in Korean or Spanish or whatever the language, and then they're trying to express the ideas in English, but it can become difficult to understand what they're saying, and sometimes I have to work with them a little bit in those areas. So those are kind of some of my beliefs about what makes good writing, and I was connecting it more to the writing assignments I have at Cal State University. Now, if you get to TOEFL, it's similar. And the TOEFL, you have to also try not to make too many errors. You have to show you have good development and organization and that you directly address the task also. So there are some similarities if you look at, how writing is assessed or graded or that kind of a thing.
Okay. And how do you view your own view in helping these students in achieving that status? Your own role in helping
my own view in helping students in their writing proficiency? It's difficult. It takes work. So when I'm helping my students work on their proficiency, for example, in my 102B class, which consists mostly of Korean students right now, I typically will have several workshops. I'll typically have them go through several workshops, maybe a self-assessment workshop, in which case I'll ask them some questions about the writing assignment. They'll write down some notes, they'll read their paper, and then they'll think about what kinds of changes they want to make with the paper. I sometimes do that to try to help them. I look at it kind of as a process, maybe, to help answer your question. It's a difficult process of working with my multilingual students, helping them through several steps or stages, each time making the paper a little bit better and a little bit better, a little bit more development, a little bit more thought, a little bit better organization, and so on. So that's kind of some of my philosophies with that.
Oh, so you regard yourself as kind of the leader in this, in helping them? I mean, your role, what is your role?
Role?
Yeah.
It depends on what we're doing, but I look at, in some cases, when I'm doing a workshop, I guess I look at my role more as a facilitator.
Oh.
In the sense that I give the students certain tasks to work on, and they'll work in groups on accomplishing those tasks. So I think it's not just a teacher-led group, but sometimes student-centered classroom works better.
Yeah.
And which is difficult sometimes to create a student-centered class with Korean students is difficult because they're not used to that type of teaching style.
Exactly.
So it's a little bit difficult there. So when I start my classes, I do a lot of question-answer. I'll ask a lot of question-answer. I'll give different students a chance to respond. And the first quarter of my three-quarter sequence with this class, there's a lot of silence. It can be quiet. I'll ask them a question. Well, they're a little bit shy. They're not used to being asked the questions, but they're also trying to put the language in their brain. They're trying to think about how to respond to my question, and they're trying to create language that helps them respond to those things. So it could be sometimes they're shy, but sometimes they're putting together what they want to say first. They're thinking in their brain what they want to say, and then they say it. The only thing is, when I ask the question and when they actually answer it, it could be up to 45 seconds before they actually say it. So sometimes in my class, I do have delays. I wait. I sometimes wait for the students to answer. And when they do answer, they typically come up with some very thoughtful responses.
It's kind of they are organizing their thoughts and how to put it in the target language.
That's right. That's what they're trying to do because their first language is Korean, and they're trying to think about how to put the idea into English, which sometimes takes a little bit of time.
Okay, so when facing these ESL students, so how do you create your curriculum? How does it design, and what is your rationale for designing your curriculum?
Good question. Obviously, with any type of curriculum, the rationale is to try to help students improve their writing proficiency, right? Whether they're native speakers or non-native speakers, that's typically the main goal, is to help improve their writing proficiency, but also with that to help improve their critical thinking abilities. So that's also important. And the way that I design, this is my syllabus this quarter for my English 104A class, but partly it's influenced by what the guidelines or departmental objectives are for the first year writing composition program. We do have some specific guidelines of things that we like to do. For example, in the guidelines, it's important that when we're constructing our writing assignments, that students when they are writing, they're responding to other people's ideas, either reading or movies or something like that. So we like to give students a chance to write in response to other people's ideas. We like them to form arguments. We like them to conduct research, meaningful research, things of that nature. So because of the guidelines, and I already know what these are, and I've been teaching here for so long, that's always in my mind when I begin constructing a syllabus like this. And also when professors are designing syllabi, there's certain things that we will put in all of our syllabi, which are similar. For example, course description. We'll talk about what our course is, what our objectives are, or we'll talk about what's called course materials, course requirements, some of those kinds of things. Any grading policies, I think it's important that you explain to students how their grades calculated. You explain to what degree each assignment is weighted in terms of the overall points in the class. I think it's important to do that. I also explain how their writing is assessed, how it's actually graded. I talk about the late paper policy. It is a requirement in our syllabi. We talk about the services to students with disabilities. We explain that. I also have a late paper policy I like to put in my syllabus, as well as a brief statement about plagiarism, because I don't want my students to be copying or paying people to do their writing, and I explain a little bit about that. And then, like most syllabi, I have what's called a tentative course outline. And in this case, the outline basically breaks down what's going to happen in the class, like April 2nd, April 4th is week 1. Week 2 is April 9th and April 11th, and I'll even put, if something is due, like their first assignment is due on April 9th, I'll put it in the syllabus there so they can see. So those are some of the things that I like to do. So I think I'm influenced, and my rationale for designing the curriculum for my class is influenced by the objectives from the English department. It's also affected by my own philosophies as a teacher and what I want my students to do, and achieve, after having finished the class. So those are kind of some of my own basic ideas.
Okay, so for the last questions, what is your own belief about the ESL students? Your own belief? My
own personal beliefs?
Yeah.
It's a pretty broad question. Well, my own beliefs is they can do well. I believe that they can succeed. I know they will struggle with some of the language issues, but I believe, and I have seen, that a lot of my international students, even though they might be quiet, they end up being some of my best thinkers and some of my best writers. So I believe, in terms of writing and working with my international students, I believe never judge a book by its cover. I mean, I can tell you, I've had some students who are really, really quiet, and then I start reading their essay, I'm like, wow, this is very, very developed, and it's very critical. There's a lot of good analysis and evaluation going on. The writer has a good argument. So I'm actually pretty surprised, when I'm working with my international students, and I'm always, I mean, I believe that they can do as good of a job with their own writing as my native speakers can. In fact, it's kind of crazy to say, but if I look at my English 104B class this quarter, which consists of Chinese students, it consists of Arab students, a Japanese student, a Vietnamese student, and some Spanish-speaking students. If I look at that class, I look at everything they've done so far, and I compare that to my English 104A class, which is a native speaker class, who has the higher grades. My international students do. They actually do quite well. Yeah, they work really, really hard. But I might not be saying everything exactly. There is a difference with my international students. Typically, they're not what's called first-generation students. A first-generation student typically means that the parents of these children did not go to college at all. Nobody. They're the very first people in their family to go to college. So a lot of my 104A students, they are first-generation students. They don't have anybody in their family at all who has ever gone to college. So that's the struggle with maybe my native speaker students. They're just not used to the college environment. They might not get as much support for going to college as some of my international students do. And my international students, I mean, almost all of them, you know, their parents have gone to college before them. So they have a lot of support there. So there are some different dynamics. You see what I'm saying? There's a few different dynamics regarding the two different populations of students, but I've been actually very, very pleasantly surprised with teaching ESL and working with international students. In fact, I like it myself. I personally enjoy it. I've been teaching international students for 18 years.
Wow.
A long time. Yeah, it's been a long time. So it's fun. I'm always learning something new. They bring in from their own cultures. They'll bring ideas into their writing, which is always refreshing in that sense.
Okay, that's really cool. Thank you, Professor. Yeah, that's all my question for today.
All right. Well, thank you for your interviewing me.
Thank you.
Yeah. All right. Bye-bye.
Bye.